Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending upon where you are residing. We will begin the webinar in just a few minutes. I'm going to give everyone literally 2 minutes to join and queue up, and then we'll go ahead and kick things off here officially. So I'm real excited to talk about the topic today. We're going to be talking about compliance, and let me just go ahead and bring that up here real quick. Okay. You should now be seeing what I'm saying. Okay. So let's go ahead and kick things off. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. As I said again, I am happy to talk to you about compliance readiness versus spreadsheet exercises. That is the topic for the X-Type webinar today. Before we get too far, I am your host, Scott Wilson, 2 L's in Wilson. I head product marketing here at X-Type, and I like to describe myself as a technologist, mostly because my career started as a software engineer. I moved into sales. I moved into professional services, and now I'm into marketing. So I've got the full life cycle of software. As I say, I wrote the code, I sold the code, I implemented the code, and now I'm marketing said code. So, yeah, let's just go ahead and jump into the agenda of what we're going to cover, because that is enough about me. So I'm going to do a quick introductory into kind of the concept. We're going to talk and dive into some of the regulatory and compliance standards that we as software professionals have to adhere to when we implement changes into our production environments. I want to talk about the issue with orphaned update sets and how that can affect that. We want to cover the what, where, when, and who of all of our changes. And then finally, what we want to end with is just speed with safety and what that actually means. So let's go ahead and dive into this. Okay, so the introduction, the impact of using spreadsheets as your deployment plan and your bill of materials, basically the record of the release payload that you're pushing to your production environments. One of the problems with this, especially when it comes to ServiceNow, is that the information that you're compiling in that spreadsheet is typically a multi-day effort. At least with a lot of the large customers that we speak with, it is a multi-day effort. And maybe it's not a multi-day effort for you, maybe it's a full day effort, but the point is it takes hours because you are manually compiling this information. And what that means is that information can be inaccurate or incomplete. So some of the release payload that should make it there unintentionally and accidentally perhaps gets skipped. The other problem with doing this with a spreadsheet, above and beyond the manual effort that it takes, is that spreadsheets are not immutable. So this means that at any point, someone can edit the spreadsheet. So they don't make for a very good system of record of what your change went. Because if somebody comes in, deletes a line accidentally, or edits it in any way, you've now lost the permanency of that record and what was actually moved into your production environment. And we'll touch on that in a little bit. But then one of the other things that happens when we move things to production is we can unintentionally orphan those updates. Since the information is incomplete that we identify, all the apps and update sets that we're moving to production, there's an opportunity for us to orphan or leave behind some of these update sets. And when it's late at night or late into a weekend and you're trying to push out this release to production, a lot of times when you see some conflicts as you're moving these things and migrating them into production, you tend to follow the practice of the last update set wins. Now, it can be that some of these update sets were intentionally deprecated in dev or even in test, and so you didn't intend to move them to production. But other times it can be that there literally are 2 competing or conflicting update sets, and you'll just take the last one and you move it forward. But the other problem is it's just not the update sets themselves, it's the contents in the update sets. And you can unintentionally, though you may have even deprecated an update set, you may have missed items in the update set that needs to move forward. And this is a problem that kind of pays itself forward in a bad light, because now you've got content running on instances that will allow the code to work in one instance, but is not going to allow it to work in another. And so when it fails, as you migrate downstream, you've now got to spend time troubleshooting this and resolving this and figuring out what the problem is. And then what's worst is these orphaned updates actually represent a lost opportunity cost, meaning your admins and developers spent time producing this code, this change, this configuration, whatever it is, and it doesn't make it to production. There's no difference between that wasted time and effort than them sitting on their hands for the same period of time. So it's a huge productivity lag in your release practice for ServiceNow. So let's jump into regulatory and compliance standards. There are a bunch of them. You see a bunch of them I have listed here. GDPR, I think most people, especially those in Europe, are familiar with what GDPR is. It's just the General Data Protection Regulations and Rules. HIPAA, most people here in the US certainly know what HIPAA is. PCI, that's basically how you, that's protecting personal information relating with the credit card industry. SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley, SOC 2, Graham-Leach, Bliley, on and on and on you can go. So there are lots. And those of you who are in specific heavily regulated industries probably recognize the ones here that you're having to adhere to. But if I take all of these, and these regulations apply to just ServiceNow at large, some of the modules that you're using. But of course, today I want to talk about, but specifically, what of these actually impact your moving things to the production environment? So if I've actually boiled these down for us and look at all the commonality between all of them into the items that do impact our migrations to production. So when I boil that ocean down to just what is common amongst all of them across all verticals, what you find is that basically, if you're moving something to a production environment, that's change. If you're going to deploy or release an app into your ServiceNow production instance, that is a change. And this change does fall under those regulatory and compliance standards. And so the first one here is an audit trail. You must maintain a detailed log of said changes. And yes, I guess a spreadsheet could be that list of your detailed changes. But that gets us to the next problem, right? Is that, well, this has to be retrievable, readable, and the last one is immutable. That's something a spreadsheet absolutely is not. So, if you use a spreadsheet as your payload, you toss it over the wall for the guys who are in production to go implement and run line by line. Where does that spreadsheet go now? Where is it? And if you're ever audited, where is it in a way that you can easily know where it is and go grab it? And hopefully no one has deleted it or edited it in any way, right? But then the other issue is when it comes to change, what all these regulations say is if you're doing change, you need to have it done in such a way that you are limiting the security access to these systems, or you're practicing the principle of least privileged access. Okay, the principle of least privilege, that's what POLP stands for. The spreadsheet and the manual effort for doing a release does not help you do that. And in fact, what is typically happening is that you have elevated access across your ServiceNow landscape because your developers and admins need that access to do their migrations. So obviously keeping things and removing vulnerabilities, which we'll get to in a second, is a big deal with these regulations. Operational process and integrity. The other thing that's common amongst these is basically stating that you can show and demonstrate that you are enforcing your standard process or your policies, the steps that are involved with this. This does a lot of things. Not only does that allow a great deal of predictability when you move things to production and reduces the errors when you're doing your production releases, but from an audit standpoint, you're able to stand with a great deal of confidence knowing that, no, this process is followed every single time, and no one can do something outside of that process. All right. And then lastly, as I'd mentioned, quality testing, validation. Obviously, you want to make sure you're not introducing vulnerabilities into your production environment. Vulnerabilities, especially when we think of security problems, hacks, or other kinds of things that can mess you up or mess up your production environment and cause problems with other aspects to all those regulations that we talked about before. So let's just give an idea for an example. Actuals versus planned. If I, just a simple case, when I'm moving to production and you're trying to be compliant with your rules and laws and regulations, I've got a spreadsheet here on the right that perhaps represents the planned release payload that is supposed to go forward. And I've got what X-type shows you on the left. It actually shows you the actuals. So you got planned versus actuals. On the left, you can see everything's nice and neatly color coded. You can see all your different instances, and you see live, real time, where everything is. You can see what the origin point is. That's what the little flag icons mean in the view here. Color coding is letting you know if it was successfully populated or if it's just in progress. If there was an error or you're waiting approval, these are all loaded here. You don't get that kind of information here in a spreadsheet, but you're just making a lot of assumptions with this. And again, the spreadsheet had to be manually built to produce the list on the right, where X-type automatically produces this list for you real time live. So it's always a live view of what's going on in your ServiceNow landscape. Additionally, one of the things X-type does here for you is you always know the what, when, where, and who of all of your releases. X-type is automatically creating that record for you, an immutable record. And you can see here it's also detailed. Not only am I getting just a small component of what I showed you on the previous screen, but I can now see here, okay, this update was in test. It went to production. Both were successfully deployed. And here's the specific list of items that were included in that production release or in that release. It's labeled, it's versioned. You get to see all of it. Spreadsheets are not immutable, but X-type is. And X-type always knows what, where, when, and who. And spreadsheets, of course, don't give you that. And even if you have other tooling that does give you kind of the, well, who approved this and this is what was supposed to be moved, it doesn't get you at the granular level that X-type is doing it and doing it in an automated fashion. So just in summary, just to boil this down and break this down to the end, essentially what we are stating that X-type can do for you is we're giving you speed with safety. Now, I say this because for those of you who are in the DevOps space, you know Gene Kim. He's kind of become the godfather of DevOps. I know Gene Kim. I was with his team and we were authoring papers. We were at this forum and we broke out into different groups so we could write these papers for his DevOps organization. And the group I was with was really frustrated that there are so many controls and so much lockdown in production. And they said, we should be able to fail. We need to have the DevOps principle of fail fast apply to production systems. And I told the group there that that was incorrect. So in my background, as I kind of hinted to at the beginning, I actually worked for a broker dealer. Okay. And I told them, it says, look, in the financial world, you can't fail fast like you're talking about in production because it can cause real harm to people. And it was like I was speaking Greek to these people. They were like, what do you mean? I said, well, there's a company called Knight Capital. You all can Google this. Knight Capital unintentionally released a bug one night over the weekend. We all know how we do our updates, our releases over weekends. And they finished it some point at 3 or 4 in the morning on a Monday morning. Wall Street opened up. They began trading, and Knight Capital accidentally, unintentionally, that bug accumulated a 40 billion with a B false position in the market. And they couldn't figure out how this could happen, what was going on. And the New York Stock Exchange didn't wait for them to find out. They literally cut the line and said, you're done trading. The company went out of business. They literally went out of business one day and people lost billions of dollars. And so production releases have to be and have to have controls on them and have to be scrutinized. So when you talk about going speed, I know a lot of you out there, if you're concerned about these policies, you're always like, well, okay, you can go fast. If we want to go fast, then we got to find a way to protect us or put a buffer or some type of, safety barriers around going fast. And this is exactly what X-Type does. So X-Type is giving you policy and process enforcement. So your deployments, whatever that standardized and your policy-based process and steps for moving something from one instance to the other, especially going to production, this can all be codified within X-Type, and then it's going to just kick it off. And then X-Type is going to do those migrations. What that now means is your developers and admins no longer need elevated privileges throughout your landscape. They just need what they need in dev or in test, wherever they have to do what they have to do. But for promotions, especially production promotions, they don't need that. This also means that X-Type is allowing you to get away from the cowboy releases, where we're just going to come in there and just, manually go move everything and make the magic happen. That's a thing of the past. X-Type can standardize this process, your process, codify it, and then you get the confidence that it's always doing what you tell it to do. So you get a lot of safety, and from an audit and compliance standpoint, you always know that things moved the way that they should have. And you still get the approvals and all those other pieces with it too, where there's even integration into ServiceNow's change requests. So if you use ServiceNow as your system of record for its own production releases, which I assume most of you do, great. X-Type integrates with this. So you're not having to give that up. It's just now you've got a standardized process with an immutable record that is now going to be tied to that change request. And when the change request is now authorized, that will trigger X-Type to go follow your standardized policy-based migration for production. Approvals can be triggering it, all those kind of things. It's all tightly integrated because X-Type is now native, so it works natively with the ServiceNow assets and functionalities. And then, as I've been talking about before, that record of change that X-Type does provide, it's immutable. Someone can't come in and accidentally have deleted that cloud drive where one of your employees stored the spreadsheet, right? Or the employee that was doing the spreadsheets, they quit, and you terminate all their records and their folders, and then wham, you find out, oh yeah, those spreadsheets were on their drive. We accidentally, that doesn't happen with X-Type. It's immutable. It's in the system. You can see it. The details within X-Type do align with industry regulations. And if something does go wrong, like there's something that comes up, some vulnerability that you now have to resolve, much less an audit, X-Type has the level of detail that you can go back and go see, well, with precision, this is what actually happened. This is where and when it happened, and this is who authorized it. And you have all those details. You're not having to guess and say, well, somebody approved this thing, and now we've got a list, and we're not sure what the payload was. With X-Type, you always know what the payload is, and you know where everything is at any given time. Obviously, if you'd like to know more about X-Type, you can find us online at xtype.io. You should know that we are a global team. We have about 115, 120 years of combined ServiceNow experience on our staff. We really know ServiceNow, and we are very keen and interested in helping you do more and be your best and be successful with ServiceNow and get the value out of the platform as fast as possible. This is our core mission here. And yeah, with that, let me just open it up to some questions here. So I'll sit here and come to the chat real quick. Give me a second while we look this up, and then we will end it and give you back your time and let you get back to your day and hopefully your weekend. Okay, so I've got a question here. What does the last update set win mean? Okay, so maybe I didn't explain this well enough. So you have an update set, and there are a lot of changes in that update set. And that's what one developer is working on. Another developer is building another update set with a bunch of changes. And it turns out that they're either writing by accidentally the same kind of changes, they're working on the same little features, or they're referencing some of the same kind of things. And so then they go to move it over. And then inevitably these two conflict with each other. And so now you're having to figure out, oh, well, which one is actually the one that we need for this particular release? And instead of going through the itemized list of what's within each update set, again, you're doing these releases late at night. You probably schedule your sleep. A lot of our customers tell us they schedule their sleep around cloning and schedule their sleep around releases. So, you it's late or it's in the weekend and you want to get this done, you're not going to go through the itemized list within the update sheet to figure out precisely what it is, right? You're going to go, well, look, this is the one that went in last. This one has the bulk of what we need. We'll move that one forward. And that's what I mean by orphaned. It's not so much that the update set itself is orphaned, it's the contents within it can be orphaned. And you can unintentionally wind up leaving functionality that you spent time working and it never makes it to production. Though you think it's supposed to be there, you may find that in fact it isn't. Okay, next question. Do you have to have X-type installed in all of the instances to get that what, when, and where, and why? The answer to this is yes. I mean, X-type's multi-environment visibility is only possible on the instances X-type is in there. And so it can provide that live view of all the instances it's on. And then when you set up those policy-based deployment flows, that'll give you those zero-touch deployments forward, or it can synchronize changes backwards. It can only do that with the instances it's actually deployed on. So the answer is yes, you need to install it on all of those instances. Last question here, and then we'll cut off here. So this is also another update set question here. It says, I'm not sure they believe update sets can be orphaned. Okay. I already kind of covered this. I mean, you might be surprised that you may not believe this, but one of the benefits, funny enough, that a lot of X-type customers have told us when they install X-type is it shows them these orphaned update sets that they didn't think they had any until they get X-type installed, and they look at that visibility that I was showing you on one of the slides, and it's then that they recognize, wow, we have dozens of update sets and content that we thought went to production but never went there. And some of this can be, of course, be by design, meaning an update set went to a point, you're starting to test it, it's not working out, you kill it, and it's not moving forward. But a lot of our customers have then found, oh, wow, but some of the stuff we actually thought went in because the plan said it went in, and our the planning tool we're using, supposedly it went in, but the plan didn't match the actuals. So, okay. Well, as I said, we'll wrap it up here. 3 questions. We'll get you in and out here in about 20 minutes. If you have additional questions, please come visit us at xtype.io, and hope you have a great day. Thank you for joining us.